You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show, ideas for happy horsekeeping.
This is a great episode about how one stable owner in England turned a traditional horse property into a remarkable track-based boarding stable, known as a Livery in the UK. Hannah Ely owns and runs the Cornish Ranch Track Livery in Cornwall, England. And she's here today to share her horsekeeping secrets with us and how she uses a variety of track features, water recipes, and natural herbs to keep her horses as happy as can be. It's a really interesting conversation. So listen in. This is episode 129 of the Stall and Stable Show, brought to you by American Stalls. Today's Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. I'm your host, Helena Harris. In addition to our title sponsor, I am grateful for the ongoing support of Barn Pros, shipping their premium barn home kits nationwide. One of my favorites is the Olympic model, a classic center aisle barn that is handsome, sturdy, and engineered to go up quick and easy. You can learn all about it and more at barnpros.com. Your horses deserve the best. That's why I partnered with and recommend investing in stable components and accessories from American Stalls. Their products are made from the highest quality materials, best practices in construction, and are designed to provide your horses with the safety, comfort, and well-being they deserve in their home. To find what's best for your horses, shop American Stalls online. You can find them at americanstalls.com. Welcome back, listeners. I'm so happy to bring you this episode, recorded in the midst of us preparing for our journey south next week. As you can imagine, things are rather chaotic at Who Hollow right now. Our farm in Aiken, South Carolina, has plenty of room for horses, but not so much for people. The cottage is only 600 square feet, and it's barely 600 square feet, which means choosing what we want to bring with us, or what we can bring with us, to this southern haven requires very, very careful selection. So that's not easy to do when all of your stuff is garbled about the house, our house here in Rhode Island. And I'm a fairly organized person, but when Buck and I bought the house we're in 6 years ago, we had to consolidate not only his house, but all the stuff that his family members had given to him, my house, and all the clutter that was in my house. It's hard when you're combining two households and you have to purge, and you have to do it quickly. So we did the best job we could, and then when we bought the house at Who Hollow, there were a bunch of things in boxes and stuff put away in drawers and closets that we said, okay, we'll get to it someday. Yeah, someday was this week. So purging, cleaning, organizing, that has all been part and parcel of preparing for the big winter move. Once Buck and I are settled in with the 3 horses and the 3 cats at Who 2 down south, I promise to dedicate an entire episode to all that transpired before and during the move. There will be lots of stories, no doubt, hopefully all good ones. So be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss all of the fun stuff surrounding the move. In the meantime, on top of everything else that's in the works, clients have been booking appointments with me for all sorts of great stuff, from business planning and real estate questions to horse property design. So it's been great, but as the weather gets colder, business owners tend to reevaluate their business. Things have slowed down a little bit in terms of the show season. So, they're starting to look at their businesses, which means they're starting to book appointments with me. So it's a good problem to have. So it's been busy, right? And honestly, I was rushing through my editorial calendar, thinking about what I could possibly put together for an episode and sort of grasping at straws for anything I thought would be remotely interesting to you. When I saw Hannah Ely's post on Facebook a few weeks back, I thought, well, that'll do. It was kind of interesting. She posted a picture of some water buckets that looked like they had some interesting stuff in it. And she had a track system, and she's in the UK. And I thought, all right, let's go for it. So I invited her to be part of the show, this episode, and she was like, all right, I don't know. I've never done a podcast before. This is a little weird, but yeah. So I said, don't worry. It'll be fun. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, all right, just get through this. We'll have a nice chat. It'll be interesting. I'll make a new friend and we'll get an episode out. Little did I know just how delightful, enlightening, and inspiring my conversation with Hannah would be. In fact, it has been just the remedy for all of the stress that accompanies getting ready for the big move. I love this episode, listeners, and I hope you do too. So let's welcome Hannah Ely from the Cornish Ranch Track Livery. Hello, Hannah, and welcome to the Stall and Stable Show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So I found you quite by accident. I was trolling Facebook, which I admit, and I saw a photograph that you posted about, I think it was in one of the track systems, one of the track system groups. And it was a series of water buckets that looked delicious, even to me. And they're set up for horses. Those water buckets are part of what I call enrichment areas, or different stations along a track system where horses can drink and eat and engage with their environment. That is what brought us together. Once I saw that picture and I clicked on your Facebook page and started to look more into what you do, I just got inspired and excited, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Tell our listeners where you're based, because you're not in the US, the name of your farm, and in general, what you do there.
Okay, so we're based in the UK and we're in Cornwall, right down the end where it's windy. And we run a track system livery. So rather than like a traditional livery where you've got stables and pastures, ours is a track system around the edge of the paddock where the horses have just got free choice to roam around and 24/7 hay.
What made you decide to do that? Because I know it's starting to trend here in the US. Europe tends to be a little bit ahead of us from time to time. What inspired you to move in that direction, and how long have you been doing it that way?
Initially, it was actually because we were getting married in the fields. And so this was last year. So over the winter before that, we needed to rest our paddocks because we needed it to look pretty for our wedding. I've always had a track as such, which went to each paddock. So we'd have a track around the outside, their water would be at the top. And then our fields were set into segments so that we could rotate them once a week. They'd move fields. So I've always had an outside track, but that was more of like what we call in the UK a paddock paradise. So we were still feeding grass. In the winter, we'd supplement with hay as well, but they would still be on the grass. But like I said, we needed to rest the pasture. So from October last year, we took them off of the pasture and we were feeding hay 24/7. And we were just like, why don't we just carry on doing this? Why don't we leave it like this? The change in the horses' behaviours was amazing. Just their mental state, physical state, like undescribable. And then randomly sat having a chat with my partner, now husband, and just said, why don't we try and see if somebody wants to come as a livery? And we were like, oh, we don't know. We're in the middle of nowhere. So we've got fantastic riding, but people have still got to travel. And I was like, well, we'll see. We didn't do anything about it. We left it. And 3 days later, 3 people messaged me asking if they wondered if we'd ever consider doing a track system livery and they'd love to come. And I was just like, wow, the world is telling us we've got to do it. So then we just started.
Let's back up to something you said that's kind of the key right there, is the change in the horse's behavior. What were the key things that you noticed when you moved them to this system full time?
Under saddle, there's no stress. Like, obviously, people say they get hot-headed horses. Some of them, they need to lunge them first, or they need to, work off some energy. We get none of that because obviously our horses are moving 24/7. So their energy, the only time you're in a saddle is when you're riding, and then it's just enjoyable. In the fields, just how calm they are. We've always been asked, why are your horses so chilled out? And it's just the environment they're in. They're just allowed to be horses. That's the thing. There's no pressure for them to have to do what we've asked them to do. They're always asked from us if it's okay to do it. Even rugging, we'll even ask the horse. Literally, I'll just walk up to the horse with a rug and be like, do you want this rug on? If the horse walks away, doesn't have the rug. It's their choice.
That's a very, very hard thing for humans to do, is to allow the horse to make some choices. We always think we know better, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we know that, it might be 55 degrees now, but it's going to get down to 30 and you're wet. And we understand some of those things. But I think that at least half the time, probably more, that horses are capable of making their own decisions. So I really like that you respect that. And I love that it translates into horses that are calmer, because, right, most of us, especially under saddle, the thing we fight the most are anxious horses.
Yeah, they're calmer in the field, which naturally makes you more relaxed, which then again under saddle, they can feel everything you feel.
Yeah, yeah. So how many horses do you have on the property right now?
We've got 6 of our own horses, and then we've got 3 that are on livery with us.
How much space do you have on your farm? You said, I think I might have asked you in the beginning, but.
We've got 5 acres. The track system itself is only on 3-acre paddock.
And what do you do with your horses? What kind of work do they do?
We've got 3 which are actually ridden horses. The other 2 are still too young. And the other one is only a 10-hand Shetland. So she's just there for the purpose of being there.
Looking cute. She's she could be your marketing person.
Yeah. But yeah, so then the other ones are ridden. They're my personal one, Sugar. She's older. So she's in her early 20s now. She's had a rough life. So she's slightly more retired. And then we've got 2 other ones, which are ex-show jumpers, which have both had issues prior to us and now are amazing.
Now that you're keeping horses this way, and it kind of happened by accident, what is your favorite part about horse keeping today with the system that you have now versus how you may have experienced it prior to this?
Just their happiness. Like, if you could see the difference in just how calm they are, and you can see mentally how, because they've got the freedom to choose what they want to do, when they want to do it, who they want to hang out with.
Does it make your barn chores and your life as a horse keeper, does it make it easier?
No. So obviously they have 24/7 hay, like all the time. Ab lib, as much as they can eat, because they will self-regulate. So when we first take on a horse, they've got to learn how to self-regulate, because before then, us as humans have been in control of how much grass you can eat, how much hard feed you can eat. So then when they're actually allowed as much forage as they want, some will lose weight because they've gone from having obviously high sugar calorie grass to then hay. Yep. Some will lose weight, some will gain weight because they just stuff their faces, basically. Yep. But then eventually, within a few months, it can take up to a year for a horse to learn how to self-regulate. They will eventually plateau out and they'll stay at that perfect weight for that horse, for themselves.
I totally thought you were going to say, keeping horses in a track system is a lot easier.
No.
I think in some ways it is, but in what you're talking about, it's not. But the transition is harder because, like you said, it's going to take some time for them to learn how to self-regulate and optimize the way they use it.
To let go of that, although they're still domesticated horses, we're trying to put them into an environment of back in the wild, in the Great Basin, how they would have lived and the natural forage and movement that they would have done. We're trying to replicate that as close as we can, but still a domesticated horse. Now, obviously, for the owner, they still want to wrap them in their bubble sometimes, and it's hard to take that step back and just allow that horse to do what it needs to do.
Okay, so you're saying emotionally it's harder.
Definitely.
What
and
about
physically?
Okay, and physically. So your chores, how is that different than?
We do 3 different packages. So we do assisted DIY, part livery and full livery. So assisted DIY is essentially you look after your horse. So the way that we do it, you stuff 4 hay nets a day and pick up a wheelbarrow of poo just to help out. And then we would take the hay out twice a day for the horses. We do the water, we do the water buckets as well. So that's the assisted one. Part livery is obviously you don't need to come out unless you want to rug your horse or pick its feet. And then full livery is you basically hand it over to us and we just do everything. So the hard work comes in the hay net stuffing. Mm-hmm. So the hay nets that we go through a week is most probably 40 to 50 hay nets a week that we obviously have to stuff. And then obviously the poo picking twice a day because the track's got to be clear. You can't leave it to build up.
I find picking on the track is a lot easier than cleaning your pastures. I mean, unless you have like a tractor and you're using a harrow and you're spreading your manure, that's one thing, but not everybody does that. Some actually have to pick their paddocks or pick their pastures. I much prefer picking a track.
In the summer, what we do is we've got a tractor. So we attach the muck spreader to the back in the summer. So as we're walking around, we poo pick it straight into the muck spreader. And then because we obviously don't use our paddocks, we just spread it straight onto the fields. And then in the winter, we've got a surface track and an unsurfaced. So in the winter, they'll come up just onto the surface. They can still go out onto the mud and, the unsurfaced, but it's their choice. Yep. But we just put hay on the surfaced ones, which then we obviously poo pick and wheelbarrow by hand. It's hard work when it's raining. In Cornwall, it rains a lot, but it's worth it. So worth it.
In my experience, there are ways that you can mitigate the stresses of the weather and even the hay net stuffing. I'm constantly trying to build a better mousetrap when it comes to efficiency in hanging hay nets. I use a series of hooks in my barn where my nets can hang, and I can fill a 20-pound hay net with one hand. I can fill a dozen of those in under 5 minutes. Just with the right setup.
To make it
Yeah.
easier.
And thankfully, there are products that are coming out on the market more and more that make this kind of horse keeping a little bit more efficient. Even if there is an increase in the labor that it takes to maintain horses on a track system, what you're saving is in stress, in vet bills, in time 100%. Down the line. It's, I think, what you invest in the labor to let them live on the track system versus what you get out of it. No, hands down, it's worth it.
Yeah, just a lot of owners don't see, like, obviously the vet bills. They still think that horses will still have the vet bills, but touch wood, we don't have vet bills. Obviously, our horses that are on our track system have to be barefoot as well because we've got hay nets, a lot of hay nets. It's dangerous. And we try and take them back to a natural state, which is barefoot. So,
yeah. And I think that, and this is a topic for other podcasts and other discussions, but I have found that most competitive horses tend to be on footing that is fairly manufactured or maintained. If you're out hunting, that's a different story. Maybe you're going to experience gravel and roots and different things. But I think having a barefoot, again, I'm a fan of barefoot, but I understand that some horses do need shoes. How wide are your tracks? Because I know there's a rule of thumb for 1 meter per every horse that you have out there. How wide are your tracks typically? And then what kind of borders do you have for fencing? Because that's always my issue, is what kind of fencing works best, looks best, and is safe. So what do you use for your fencing around your tracks?
So for the width of the tracks, initially we went for what our longest horse was ×2, because she's lead mare. She's a big girl. She's 16.3. So we needed to make sure that everyone could scoot around her rather than her blocking the track. But now our tracks, the smallest are 6 meters wide. And then the corners are never corners. They're always curved. So there's never any pinch points. Then they're a lot wider. They're most probably 8 to 10 meters wide on the corners. And they've also got loafing areas. So they've got a big 20 meter by 30 meter area where they can just all go, which they do in the summer. About 2:00, they'll take themselves down there, chill out. They all fall asleep. And then by 3:00, that's it. They're back up on the track, loafing around, doing what they want to do. So that's how wide they are. For fencing, we are unusual because most track liveries have the horse safe fencing and it's all permanent. But we're still learning how many horses we want within our track system. So whilst we're still learning that, then we've still got just normal plastic posts with ropes, but we have emergency releases. So every 2 meters is an emergency release on all the strands. So they're literally just hand tight. So if a horse was even surely just to sneeze on it, it would just pop open,
Yeah.
which sometimes is inconvenient because obviously if they're in a playful mood and they hit it, it does break it into the pasture. But we're always here. So they're literally in there for like a minute and then they're back out. But we'd rather have the emergency safeties than them get caught in it, because that's why a lot of people use the horse safety fencing, is the risk of them getting their legs caught. But because they're breakaways anyway, I'd rather that than someone tear a tendon or anything worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they do get out, they're getting out into yet another fenced in area, your pasture area. It's not like they're going out into the road or something like that. Okay.
No, and we have some post and rail as well, like what we call our hard standing area, which is the biggest bit of the area. So that's 50 meters by 15 meters wide. That is post and rail fencing. And eventually we would absolutely love to have a fully fancy, but like I said, whilst we're still learning, we might need to make the tracks wider to allow for the amount of horses that we have on the track system. So
I recommend that to my clients all the time, especially those who have just purchased new properties or they're making changes to an existing property. It's okay to go with temporary fencing, electric or otherwise, until you know exactly how your horses are going to use the property, how you're going to use the property, what your workflow is like, what your chores
what their
are
favourite
like.
areas are. They have favourite areas, so make those favourite areas bigger. The same as over the summer, we decided to, instead of just doing round the outside or through the middle, we decided to do a wiggly line with a roundabout in the middle. Well, if I had permanent fencing, I wouldn't have been able to put a roundabout in the middle, which they absolutely love. So
I love that you have a roundabout. That is so cool. I mean,
they love it.
It's like Disneyland for these horses.
Literally. When they're having like a ball down there, you'll find they'll come up the straight. Half of them will go that way, half will go the other. And then they're like, oh my God, you went the wrong way around the roundabout. And then they'll come back down the other way. It's crazy, but it's lovely.
What a joy. That's the other thing, is to see them. It's nice. Everyone thinks of these, we want these big open fields with our horses and all the space that they could possibly need. But I think the track systems really do encourage them to be more social with each other, engage more with the land and their environment. And they're nomadic. Horses do move around. So
a lot
in the wild, right? So when you make a track system for them, you kind of encourage that deep-seated nomadic behavior, which is great fun to watch. I love it. You talk about the roundabout, the loafing areas. Let's talk about the photo that you put up with the water. So you have a series of water buckets that are available for the horses to choose from. And in each bucket, you have a different recipe. Tell us about that.
So I don't know where I first saw it. It was most probably on one of the other track system pages. I think somebody was offering salt water and a few other things, but I've never really seen it before. We held a zoo pharmacology course here. So anything like self-selection of herbs, so they can eat whatever herbs they need from the hedgerows. And I've always been interested in anything natural anyway. Like if a horse is in pain, like to an extent, then any natural remedies we've always loved. And we just wanted a way to be able to offer things that they would usually be able to find in the wild, like herbs that could help them. But obviously, when you're on a track system and you've only got the same 4 hedges that are around you, every season, different things grow in the hedgerows, but it's obviously limited. We do have a bank that we're going to plant up with all different herbs in it. But with the track system, it's a work in progress. So we did the water buckets and they love it. Like they absolutely love it. And I love it. Like just seeing which ones every day they've selected and which one's their favorite at certain times and what's helped them. Like we've been doing natural wormers in them as well. We use mugwort and wormwood, just a trial to see. And we've actually had the lowest worm count we have ever had, which were 50 and below than we've ever had. And I think that is most probably one, because obviously we've got to poo pick every day. Yeah. So they're not re-ingested. They're not eating on the pasture where the eggs would have been laid and 2, because we were obviously feeding this natural wormer, they can eat it when they want it and when they need it. The same as our hedgerows. They'll clear a holly bush. You'll find like coming up to now, we've got a holly bush down there and they will strip it. They will strip it bare. They'll get cowpat poos because their guts are literally clearing out everything they don't need.
Yeah.
And that's them just self-worming. They know. Horses know what they're doing.
Interesting. Mugwort grows in the Northeast US. Here, I'm in New England, and we have mugwort everywhere. And I thought, oh, it smells so lovely. And I've heard of teas being made from it. I had never heard of it as a natural dewormer. So I'm going to research that. Thank you for the tip there. So tell us about what some of the things that you put in. So obviously a mugwort. What else have you put in the water?
So their favorite, like all-time favorite, is turmeric, which is obviously turmeric and black pepper. It is anti-inflammatory. So we've got older horses here. We've got horses that have had laminitis, horses that were close to having laminitis. So their bodies are obviously higher in inflammation. So that one, even the young ones, though, that have never had any issues, like they empty it so many times a day. That is their favorite. And what we tend to do is just trial it. So I'll put the buckets out. We refresh them every 2 days anyway, because no one wants to drink gone off tea at the end of the day, because that's what it is. So every 2 days, we'd refresh it with the same herbs. But if there's a bucket that over a course of a week hasn't been touched, that one's removed and we put a different herb in to see which one it is they need. But like I said, turmeric is there for the last 6 months plus, is always there now because it just seems to be what they want all the time. This week we're trialing some different ones. I just literally go through a website that we use and think, oh, hang on, yeah, one of them's got a slight cough. We'll do some respiratory herbs this week. Or one of them might have an abscess brewing. We'll do some anti-inflammatories or gut issues or digestive. So whatever I feel the horses might have going on and like season-wise is what I'll try and put in the buckets. Sometimes they won't want it, which is fine. And a lot of people say to me, oh, what a waste of money. It doesn't matter. The amount of hay they throw on the floor is a waste of money. But you might find that 2 months later, they'll go nuts for it.
And this is part of the experimental process as you see what they like. I mean, they might prefer one herb in the summer and another in the winter. So you do have to just keep experimenting. Did I see somewhere that you had cinnamon and maybe peppermint or spearmint in there? How did they like those?
So we've literally only just started that this week. The beginning of the week, cinnamon was no, thank you. I think half a bucket went in a day, which that's not a lot for them really for 9 horses. But yeah, this last half of the week has been as fast as turmeric. Spearmint is always good because what horse doesn't love a polo? But what was the one I put in the end bucket this morning? Yarrow has been their favourite again this week. But one of the herbs that I did, which I think was willow wood, which is the willow bark, they've not touched it.
So this brings me to a question about you. You clearly are very knowledgeable about this stuff. How did you garner so much knowledge? Tell us about your background, because I want to, can you come back on for 10 more episodes? I just want to pick your brain about all of this.
I've always been more of a natural person anyway, like I said, with herbal things, even for us humans. That's obviously where it's come from the horses. And then everything about track systems, I've just learned from what other people have done. And it's just become a passion, I guess.
Yeah, it's clear. And when you're passionate about something, your curiosity is always present, and it's fun to research it, to learn, to experiment. But you also said that you had was it a zoological?
Oh, we held a zoo pharmacology course. So we had someone come in.
Okay.
Yeah, come in to do a course. So we walked around the lanes, found the herbs that were growing in our hedgerows. And then we did a self-selection with 2 of the horses in the field shelter, laid them all out on the floor and let them select which ones they needed. And throughout 15 herbs, they'd go through and pick out the ones that they needed, and they'd leave the ones they didn't. So when we did it with one of the horses, the 16-3, I said about Lily, her favourite herb was yarrow. So what the lady then did was got the dried herb form of yarrow and was just literally putting it in a bucket, in a tub, and just feeding it to her. until she didn't want any more. Like she just topped it up and topped it up and topped it up. She got to the point where she said that maybe she needs something stronger. So she also had essential oils as well, which I've studied into, but haven't yet brought that into the ranch. It's on its way. It's just a work in progress again. But so she had the yarrow oil, and said like if she needs it in her body more than the herb can offer, because obviously the essential oil is a lot stronger because it's more pure. So she put a drop on her hand and Lily literally just walked away. Like, no, thank you, I don't want it. And we were all like, wow, why? Like she wanted it. With that, Lily came back, she sniffed it, turned around and gave her bum to the lady because she wanted that essential oil put on her pelvis. So Lily was an ex-show jumper who has got pelvic issues. She will always have it her whole life. And she needed that oil, not for ingesting it, but physically put on her. So Steve showed her that was the area she needed it on.
I'm going to share a quick story. A friend of mine came who is starting her own business in Reiki for animals. Yeah. And we have a senior Maine Coon cat, senior, he's 16, who's very shy when guests come to our home. I mean, very shy, not interested. Mm. Well, this was this woman's second time visiting our home, and we all sat down at the dinner table, and my cat, Jack, very boldly walked down the stairs, jumped up onto the dinner table in front of this woman's place setting and promptly put his bum right in her line of vision. He sat there. Actually, He didn't even stand there. He stood there. And my husband and I were like, oh my God, we were so embarrassed because our first thought is, oh my God, we're about to have dinner and our cat, and this never happened. So we weren't expecting it. And thank goodness. I mean, she was so full of grace. She said, I think he's telling me that he's got some issues in his back end, the lower part of his digestive system. And do you mind if I just do a little Reiki with him right now? And I said, have at it. You know, she clearly didn't mind he was on the dinner table. And she worked on him for maybe a total of 5 minutes. Yeah. And she took her hands away. He turned around to look at her as if to say, you're not done yet. Let's do a little bit more. She worked on him for another 2 minutes, took her hands away. He licked his paws, jumped off the table, and has been noticeably more engaged and lively and less lethargic since then.
Reiki is amazing.
I had it done on my thoroughbred mare and was equally surprised at the results. Again, just equally surprised at the results, pleasantly surprised. So I just wanted to corroborate what you said about your horse presenting her bum as if to say, this is what I need.
They will tell you. And I'm a level 2 Reiki as well. So the horses can take it from me whenever they literally want it. But we've also got a person on Livery here, which also does Reiki. And she'll just go into the field and we both will. And whatever horses come to us, they need it at that time. You'll be with them. And then they'll get to that point where that's enough and they'll walk away. They take what they need.
And I think that for me, as somebody with a science background, I'm very cautious about allowing anything that hasn't been peer-reviewed, double-blind, control-studied. Research does show in many areas that Reiki is beneficial. The anecdotal evidence, however, cannot be ignored. And I think that's something where scientific research and other kinds of data, i.e. anecdotal data from the field, those aren't fully connected yet. And I do think that it's very valuable. So as
long as they're given the choice, and if you specifically go into that horse, you always ask permission. But if they're coming to you anyway, they've had that choice and they've made that decision to take it at that time.
And no harm, no foul. And but for me, in my experience, every time we have used Reiki or given horses choice or just worked with an alternative type of healing or care methodology, it's always been beneficial. So, and I think a really important part of that is the freedom of choice. And I love that you give your horses the freedom of choice. Hannah, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but we're out of time for this particular conversation. Where can people find out more about the Cornish Ranch and you if they want to follow along with your journey?
We've got a Facebook page, the Cornish Ranch Track Livery. We're also on Instagram. And I've always said, if anyone's ever got any questions, I know a lot of track liveries do consultations they charge for. But to me, if there's people that want to know more about track systems or herbs or anything, ask me. Because the more people that know, the more people that can help their horses. That's amazing. Reach out, put me a message. I'm happy to answer anything.
Super. And I'll be sure to post links to the Cornish Ranch Livery's Facebook page. Good Lord, say that 5 times fast. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an enlightening and delightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was lovely.
Okay, there were some surprises in that conversation. I hope you found it enlightening and inspiring. And thinking about alternative ways to keep our horses and allowing them the freedom to make choices under our supervision, of course, because we're still keeping horses in a human environment, which means they need supervision. But I do really appreciate the fact that Hannah is experimenting. She has the courage to allow her horses to make choices and to see what works best for them and to respect their natural instincts. And to me, keeping an open mind and a brave heart will allow us to do some experimentation as well. And I'm looking forward to doing some more of that down at Who To, now that I have a little bit more space to do it. So again, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If it piqued your interest and your curiosity, and if there's any part of it that you would like me to talk about more, or you want to get in touch with Hannah, there will be links to the show notes. Go up to episode 129 at stallandstable.com, and you'll find some more information about Hannah, the Cornish Ranch Track Livery, and probably some resources, links to resources, scientific journals that support how herbal medicine could be helpful for our equine companions. If you have a horse property, you're thinking about buying one, or you need some help getting it set up or remodeled or tweaked, please feel free to give me a call or book an appointment. You can book private farm consultations at stallandstable.com. And or if you have a horse business and it's time for you to take a closer look at how you can improve that, that is my wheelhouse, kids. Go to stallandstable.com, book an appointment. I'd love to help you through whatever it is you're struggling with. Thank you once again to our sponsors, American Stalls and Barn Pros. You can find American Stalls at americanstalls.com and Barn Pros at barnpros.com. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, listeners, the primary purpose of this podcast is to entertain and inform. The information contained herein is not a substitute for professional, medical, or legal advice. Please consult with a credentialed professional in the area of your specific inquiry.